Hi, my name is Sanjeev. I'm a technical evangelist at Microsoft. Today I'm talking about how to bring social to your app, which is to say how you would integrate social network functionality into your application. And this talk is focusing specifically on Facebook. Now, why would you want to make your app social? Why would you want to integrate Facebook and so on? That is not necessarily directly related to your application. So according to Facebook, they give examples of two major game publishers, Vuga and Nordeus. The claim is that a huge percentage of users log into these applications with Facebook. And more so importantly, people who come in or who log into these applications using Facebook, they are a whole lot more likely to actually spend more money in the game. There are also statistics that people who log into the applications are a lot more likely to share this data via word of mouth. They are more likely to invite their friends over, and there are further statistics to say that app invites drive downloads. So if someone is playing a game and then they decide that they want to invite their friend over, they send an invitation. The Facebook platform, the next time the person logs in, the Facebook platform will deliver them a notification saying they have been invited, so that other person can join in. So this way the app invites drive more and more downloads, and of course the sharing increases reach through word of mouth. Now Facebook is a platform for telling stories, and there are two kind of stories. Well, really, I mean, the way people tell stories is just one. You say, I went there, I baked a pie, I met my friend, I looked at some pictures, and so on. But the way Facebook organizes their stories is in two buckets. One are called unstructured stories, which are on the left hand side of the screen, and the second is the structured stories, which are on the right hand side of the screen. So what do unstructured stories look like? They are the usual messages, posts that you would post on Facebook. You just go and type something in and hit enter. Like for example, you say testing Facebook message posts, you just enter a message, hit enter, and you have a story. Versus structured stories is things that we seem to be looking at more and more, usually on our timeline. So for example, let's say if I have an app called Karma Calculator, so I publish a message on my timeline saying I achieved the karmic level worm. Here, I mean, there are items that you can interact with, the object worm that you can interact with, the app Karma Calculator that you can interact with. You can click it, you can find more information, and so on. And the best part is that this information can be posted programmatically, and you can interact with it programmatically. So now Facebook as a platform is moving more towards structured stories in general. Now remember we said Facebook is a platform for telling stories. The anatomy of a story is the following. In English language, you have a subject and then a verb and then a noun, which forms a sentence. For example, if you go to the next slide, it's Sanjeev climbed Mount Rainier with cool maps. Here the action is the climbed verb. The noun at the end is Mount Rainier here, on which we acted. So Sanjeev climbed Mount Rainier, and then you have further attributes saying with cool maps, which is the application that might have originated this story. Now one thing to understand is that there is this concept called Open Graph that Facebook has, which is key to understanding how you could programmatically interact with Facebook. The Facebook exposes all their endpoints as APIs called Facebook APIs, and Open Graph is a really key thing to understand there. So moving on, if you wanted to understand what Open Graph was, you could just go to the web and type define Open Graph, and you would not find a ton of useful information. What you would really get is something like Open Graph. The symbol on the left is what Facebook describes Open Graph with. On the right hand side, you see things like, there are people and then there are apps and they are connected, and then there are verbs in the middle saying friend or like or listen or watch, and these are all somehow connected. So Open Graph really, as far as Facebook is concerned, is a connected web of objects. But really, what is the Open Graph? I mean, we understand it's a connected web of objects, But what are the objects and how exactly are they connected? What are the, like, if you're a computer science major, you can understand in a graph there are vertices and then there are edges. So what are the vertices in this graph, and then what are the edges? So let's start with the vertices. Inside the Facebook databases, inside their huge data centers, there are servers, and these servers are what hold the Open Graph objects. And this is how an Open Graph object looks like. On the top right corner, you can see there is something called objects in Facebook Open Graph. So an object, or an Open Graph object in Facebook's terminology, really is just a piece of information that has an identifier which uniquely identifies it. Then it has a type which is like a data type, if you have in normal programming languages terms. So each Open Graph object has an ID which uniquely identifies it. Then it has a type which identifies the kind of object that it is. And then it usually has a URL associated with it, which says, okay, I have an Open Graph object in the Facebook network, but any further information about this Open Graph object actually resides at this URL. So you may have a story, like, you may have a story about a bunny going around in a field. And then you created an Open Graph object that refers to that story, and the Open Graph object actually resides in the Facebook network, but the story will reside somewhere else. And the Open Graph object will have a link to that story. So that's how an Open Graph object actually looks like. So the highlighted object in the yellow box is the Open Graph object that exists in the in Facebook network. And then more information or content for the object actually resides on a website, which you can see at the bottom. There is a web page where you have more information about this particular object. So now we know what objects look like. The way to imagine how Facebook actually stores the vertices of the Open Graph is to imagine that on the right hand side you see this table, right, which says ID and then the URL and then the type. So you can imagine that Facebook has this really huge table in which are listed all the objects, their IDs, and then the URLs that these IDs point to. The objects point to the actual content, which is actually stored at the URL, and the data type of this particular object. We'll come to where the data type comes from in a minute, but this is how it looks like. These are the Open Graph objects. Now, Facebook documentation does not readily differentiate between the Open Graph objects versus content for the objects. I guess, by this point of time, you have understood what the difference is. The objects reside in the Facebook network. The content for the object actually resides somewhere else on the web pages that you control. So where does the Open Graph object content live on? You can as you might have just noticed, the Open Graph content has to reside on a server outside Facebook. So you can host it on your server, in which case you have to spin up a server and put all the data there, or you can host it on Facebook. This is a very recent development that Facebook has just come up with in the last few months. It is still in beta, but it is coming up and coming. So understand that in contrast to these, the actual content is living on your own servers, but in contrast, the Open Graph objects always live within the Facebook network. Now the next question would be, what about the edges? So we talked about the vertices, but we didn't talk about the edges. A graph has vertices and edges. So here you can see I am an Open Graph object. I am represented by an ID. I have attributes. There is information about me in Facebook. And then my wife is also there on Facebook somehow. And we are connected via what is called an edge, and what is actually, it's an action. So I and my wife, we are a friend. So I'm connected to my wife via friend action. Similarly, if I have the movie Avengers, then I watched Avengers. So I am connected to the Avengers object via an action called watched. So edges in Facebook graph, Open Graph, are called actions, and objects in Open Graph are connected via edges, which are just actions. So that's it for basic concepts around Facebook Open Graph. Next time around, I will run through more details and also a demo on how to use the Facebook SDK for .NET.